Hey friends, welcome to Grace Church at Home. We have something special for you today. One of our newest mission partners, one of our newest global partners, Jonathan Heppner from Hope Renews, is with us. We've had a chance to get together with him during the week and hear some of the stories, and you're going to get to hear from his heart this morning. And so if you were tuning in looking for In the Meantime, we'll be back with our regular series next Sunday. But for now, enjoy Jonathan Heppner from Hope Renews.
Good morning. It is awesome to be able to be with you this morning or this afternoon or this evening, whenever you're watching this. And what a great privilege for me to be able to share a little bit of the scriptures with you today. If you don't know, my name is Jonathan, and we are global partners with Grace and get to do some really cool things around the world. But instead of talking about what I do or what my wife and I do, I want to spend a little bit of time doing some heavy lifting and unpack some ideas of holiness and what holiness looks like in the world. So the scriptures I want to work from, there's several that I want to work from today. The first one's found in Psalm 29, verse 2, and it says, "Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of his holiness." 1 Chronicles 16:29 says, "Give unto the Lord the glory due unto his name. Bring an offering and come before him and worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness." Now, part of what I do when I'm reading the scriptures is I'm always looking for anthems or themes or through lines. And what I find quite often when I read the scriptures in regards to holiness is you get two almost ideas that are presented. In these first couple scriptures, it seems that there's a sense that there is beauty in holiness. And then we find scriptures like this, like in Isaiah 53, a very well-known messianic passage that prophetically paints the picture of the Messiah, of the Savior. And it reads like this: "Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a tender shoot and like a root out of the dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him. Nothing in his appearance that we should desire him." In fact, Eugene Peterson in the Message writes, translates that as, "There is nothing to cause us to take a second look." Verse 3, "He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. Like one from whom people hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him in low esteem." Now, these are two very opposite sort of pictures of response or what holiness looks like or feels like. Side by side, I feel like a contradiction that we worship the Lord in the beauty of his holiness, yet there was nothing about the Holy One that we should desire him. Nothing about him that was attractive. Now, quite often what we do when we are reading or studying the scripture or listening to the scripture being preached is we tend to default to what we have known. We default to assumptions, often inherited assumptions, and we miss tensions that lie underneath what is obvious. And I think it's important as faithful followers of Jesus and as faithful students of the text that we learn to faithfully read the text and allow tensions that are there to exist. Now, I think there's two central mistakes that we make when we engage or attempt to apply the idea of holiness in our lives. And these mistakes become significant, especially in traditions like yours and mine, where holiness matters. In fact, we're part of what we would call a holiness tradition. The first mistake we make is a mistake in regards to us. When we begin to work through this idea of holiness in our lives as followers of Jesus, our immediate assumption is that we're referring to sinlessness instead of Christ-likeness. This misunderstanding has incredibly far-reaching implications, and the implications tend to skew the mission of one who would call themselves a follower of Jesus. Philippians 3 and verse 4 says, "If someone else thinks they have reasons to put confidence in the flesh, I have more." This is the Apostle Paul writing. "Circumcised on the 8th day, of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, Hebrew of Hebrews, in regard to the law of Pharisee, as for zeal, persecuting the church, as for righteousness based on the law, faultless." So this is Paul before he has come to the knowledge of Jesus, he is saying he was blameless concerning the law. As shocking as it is to hear, what Paul is saying here is that sinlessness based on the law is possible apart from Jesus. Paul says, I was blameless. All of the rules, the regulations, the things, I did it. I was blameless according to the law. So where we end up is realizing that what Paul finds in Jesus is not a way to be sinless. He had already found out how to do that. He just worked hard enough. Obsessive, compulsive, maniacal in terms of following the rule to the letter. He could keep the law blamelessly if he worked hard enough. What he finds in Jesus is the holy intention born in the heart of God. He finds purpose. He finds life. He finds meaning as a created human. And that sinlessness did not bring about the fulfillment of joy in his life. You see, what we're striving for in following Jesus is not to be sinless. Stay with me. What we're striving for is not to be sinless, but rather to become like Jesus. And in becoming like Jesus, we awaken, we realize who we were made to be. You see, we cannot fulfill the loving and passionate intention of God that was expressed when he created you without this truth. It's in becoming like Jesus that you unlock the wonder of who you were made to be. The ultimate work of the Spirit, the goal of the work of the Spirit in your life is not to help you overcome sin. That's not the ultimate goal, because you can overcome sin if you work hard enough, according to Paul. The truth is that the accomplishment of overcoming is possible, but it only sets you up for the greater sin. And that sin is what the work of Christ exposes. Sinlessness as an objective creates an environment that breeds pride. The greatest sin of all. It's what we fall into. It's this idea that we compare ourselves to someone who's farther along in the faith, or those who would judge us, or how we judge others. This comparative cycle of pride. And why would that be? Why would an objective like sinlessness create an unholy environment? It's because I think you have a calling, I have a calling, that rests on my life that is greater than sinlessness. And to settle for the complacency of the guilt of never achieving sinlessness is tragedy. In fact, by settling for that guilt, what we become is angry, vengeful, and sad. I think you're marked with a calling. I think we are all marked with a calling. And that calling is unlocked and realized only when we lean in to the invitation to become like Jesus. I think the second mistake we make in regard to holiness is this. We make a mistake in regards to God. Our tendency is in understanding the idea of the holiness of God is that we see it as his otherness. We think it's what separates him from us. And when what we need to understand is that it is the holiness of God that gives him the ability to be with us without ceasing to be God or us ceasing to be human. Isaiah 12 and verse 5, says, "Sing to the Lord, for he has done glorious things. Let this be known to all the world. Shout aloud and sing for joy, people of Zion, for great is the Holy One of Israel among you." Here's the thing that we miss. He is only able to be in our midst because he's holy. So often we assume that it's his holiness that keeps him at a distance, that it's what separates us. It's what keeps him from working in my life because there's sin in my life. That God won't come near, that he won't work, he won't draw near to me until I'm perfect or sinless. That is not the God of the Scriptures. When you read the account of Jesus' life on earth, he was not repelled by sin or sinners. Jesus is not even repelled by the Pharisees, whose sin is to have pride in the fact that they were sinless, according to the law. Jesus is not repelled by anyone, anywhere, at any time. And if you or I find ourselves being repelled by anyone at any time, it is to that degree that we know we are not yet like Jesus. Here's how these misunderstandings play out in our lives. If we make either of these errors in belief, we interpret following Jesus as making sure that we limit our contact with anyone that we deem as dangerous, or we limit our contact with someone who might threaten our purity. When we make these mistakes, we unintentionally build a virus within our system of faith that breeds fear, it breeds rejection, and it breeds failure. We end up thinking purity is fragile, faith is susceptible, holiness must be safeguarded by distance and separation. And so we set up Christian subcultures that protect us from that which might infect us. We build up bastions of defensive walls to make sure nothing gets to us. We build no man's lands in between us and the danger so that we aren't pulled in to the muck and the mire. We won't want to be in those places because it'll corrupt our imagination. We don't want to enter into real friendships that require real time and effort for fear that our purity will be made impure. We'll lose it. We'll lose hold of it. Something will corrupt, destroy, and damage. That defensive and fearful posturing is born in the heart of religion, not in the heart of the gospel. 1 John 4:4. You, dear children, are from God and have overcome them because the one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world. I love the J.B. Phillips translation. He translates it like this. You who belong to God have already defeated the spirit that is in the world because the one who lives in you is far stronger. It's this attitude, this assumption that the work of Christ within you is stronger, greater, more powerful, more robust, bigger than you can possibly imagine. I think it's a tragedy that for so much of our traditions, we've adopted these attitudes of fear, creating these parallel cultures that separate us from people, with the dominant idea that if you place yourself in a position where you can be influenced by those who do not yet know the wonder of Jesus, those who are not holy, that you will become defiled and lose your way. I mean, they used to tell me all the time when I was a child going to youth group, it would be purity, 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 separate yourself, separate yourself, separate. Oh, but by the way, bring your friends to youth group. Well, wait a second. How can I have friends if I'm supposed to be separate from these things? If these two thoughts about holiness are true, holiness as sinlessness and holiness as separateness, our sinlessness, if that's what holiness, and if holiness is God's separateness, then it is impossible to understand the coming of Jesus. How do we explain God coming to us if holiness is a separateness, if it's a sinlessness, as opposed to a Christ-likeness and an ability to be present and remain pure? John 20 and verse 21, again, Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I'm sending you." How do we explain Jesus defending sinners who would touch him, follow him around scandalously? Luke 7, the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and you say, here's a glutton and a drunkard and a friend of tax collectors and sinners. In verse 39 of Luke 7, when a Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him. You see, Jesus was not afraid of being in the midst of what we would call darkness because he understood the essence of what it meant to be holy. Jesus was not worried about sinlessness, nor was he repelled by sin. I love this because it means that God is already in the dark places of the world waiting for those of us who can see him to proclaim him. The heart of holiness is about becoming like Jesus. And the heart of a holy God is that he does not want to be separated from people. Holiness is the energy that attracts God to our brokenness and sin, that he might pull us in to his redeeming and healing embrace. You see, if God's priority is sinlessness, none of the actions or words or ideas of Jesus make sense. I think it's closer to the truth to say this: God is drawn to our sin for the sake of overcoming it. He's drawn to the very places of brokenness and rejection and resentment and what we would refer to as unholiness, because he knows that the presence of his holiness redeems it with wonder and mercy. You see, our holiness has to resonate with the same energy, the same intention, the same movement, the same embrace, the same healing power. The presence of holiness in our lives means we're drawn to the brokenness, the sin, and the darkness that is present in our world. I'm not repelled to it, I'm drawn to it, because holiness does not pull away, it presses in. Holiness does not separate, it pursues. Holiness does not preserve itself, it sacrifices for the sake of love. Holiness is not a place of safety and security. It is a place of love and sacrifice. It is the very essence of the cross. And I think this is the very core of the gospel and the Great Commission. And that's the call of God, that we would look for the dark places of the world, that we might go there and be among them. When our holiness, I mean, maybe we could say it like this: insofar as I hate the other in our world, when I distrust, when I'm angry, when I'm furious with the darkness in my world, insofar as I hate the other, I am self-righteous, because I'm making this about me. The dead giveaway in regards to the source of our righteousness is, or whether it is his or ours, is how I respond to the sin and the brokenness and the darkness in the lives of the people around me. Do I respond with mercy and grace and gentleness and kindness? Or do I respond with anger and fear and resentment? Do I build walls? Do I build alternative realities? Or do I step into the middle and say, not without them? Not without them. When our righteousness in his holiness becomes desperately attractive. It is light in a dark room. It's water in a desert. It is calm in a storm. It is an umbrella in the rain. It is wonder in a world that is desperate for awe. When holiness flows from there, the only people who resist it are people bound by religion. Oh, man, I wish we had hours to talk about this. When a person is truly holy, it is desperately attractive because it's safe, because it's pure, and it is wonderful. We are meant to live with the divine energy of God, propelling us into the hidden corners of the world with gentleness and joy, into brokenness with the healing touch of love, into confusion and sorrow with hope that is beyond understanding. A redemptive revolution that isn't looking for sanitization, it's looking for transformation. And that only comes when someone meets the reality of the one who loves them as they are, where they are, how they are. Period. Holiness is about the glorious adventure of living in a world as an alien, not being of it, being surprising, living in a world without fear, that we might transform it with the wonder of love. It's looking at all the circumstances and situations, and instead of pointing the finger, instead of raging because we're desperately afraid, we're constantly leveraging our creativity that we might find new ways to hold someone close and let them know you're loved, you're not alone, you belong here. You see, there's a word for this. It's called redemption. We are agents of redemption. We look at the broken things of the world, the broken lives, the broken situations, the broken circumstances, and we say, it's okay. We will rebuild. We'll help you. We'll walk with you. We'll love you. We'll stand with you, no matter what it costs me. I love Romans 5 and verse 20 in the Phillips translation, and it says this: though sin is shown to be wide and deep, thank God his grace is wider and deeper still. I think it would be so incredible if what we as the followers of love became known for was our ability to love. Wouldn't that be something? That's what marked us as a holy people, is that we could stand in the darkness. We could be a people in the world, but just not of it. Bound by the knowledge that the one who is in us is greater than any circumstance, situation, or understanding that might be accepted. Lovers of people, lovers of God. I love it. May God bless you.